Welcome to Resilience Development in Action with Steve Bisson. This is the podcast dedicated to first responder mental health, helping police, fire, EMS, dispatchers, and paramedics create better growth environments for themselves and their teams. Let's get started.
You know, you've heard me talk about this before. GetFree.ai. Great for your note-taking, good for your transcript, good for your goals, good for everything that you do in a HIPAA-compliant nature. And if you use code STEVE50 at checkout, you will get $50 off your first month. And also, if you get a whole year, you will also get 10% off the whole year. But GetFree.ai has freed me to do more things with my life, including work on other passions. So get freed to do your notes, get freed from doing your goals. Get free.ai with code STEVE50 to get $50 off your first month. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to episode 231. If you haven't listened to episode 230, it's with Tony DiCenzo. I hope I said it right this time. We talked about the military, it was Veterans Day, and I hope you enjoyed that episode. But for episode 231, I like to think that she's a real friend. And what I mean by that is this. You have colleagues, you have people you know, and then you have friends. And I'd like to think that this person that's sitting next to me is a friend. I think we've had a relationship for over 10 years on and off of discussing different things.
Yep.
And I have much respect for her because the first time I did an episode, this is like 3-4 years ago, on finding your way through therapy about first responders, she was the first one to point out, hey, you didn't mention a dispatch. And I know that that's going to sound like some BS compliment. Thank you, for real.
Welcome. Because
as of after that, I always do it. And I think a few times I've even mentioned you. But Lisa Trusas, welcome.
Thank you.
Start again. Welcome to Resilience Development in Action.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
You'll always be invited. You're invited at my office. You're invited on the podcast. You're invited in my house if you want to.
Oh, thank you.
Just call in advance.
All right. Yes.
I'm not good at like people just showing up, but
all right, I can do that.
But I know you. I feel like I know you really well. Mm-hmm. But maybe for the audience of Resilience Development in Action, they don't know who you are. So maybe you can introduce yourself.
No, they don't. My name's Lisa Trusas, and I am a single mother of 2, and I am a dispatcher for the Milford Police Department for the last over 20 years. I'm also a recovery coach with Chris's Corner and the assistant director at Chris's Corner, which is a recovery resource center here in Milford.
You just do that? That's it?
Well, I mean, no, you're right. So I'm also on the board for the...
Exactly. I'm like, why is she selling herself short?
I'm on the board for Pathway to a Better Life, which is a temporary warming shelter here in Milford. And then I'm also on the board for the, I'm going to say it wrong because I always mess it up, but the Milford Skate Park Project.
Yeah.
We're trying to get a skate park here in town.
That's why I get those emails about sponsorship all the time.
Yeah. Sorry. I got to poke and beg and plead.
Hey, and you know I've always supported you the best I
You have.
could.
Thank you.
You know, the hardest part of knowing someone so well is you don't know where to start.
True.
You know, I know this question is kind of a standard on my podcast, but I'm going to ask you anyway, and on Milford TV it's also important. Yeah, we're friends, but what made you really, like, when I contact you and I say, hey, you want to be on the podcast, what made you want to do it?
I think just knowing you on a personal level, but also the professional level. You were my therapist for a little while. So I think knowing you on all levels, I just know how strong you are in this field and how passionate you are about first responders and getting them the help that we actually need, as much as no one will admit it.
Well, I think that, you know, we can go there at some point because that's the other part too, is how do we get them to get help? Because I think that's the biggest problem. I would say that, again, without breaking any walls, you've made dozens of referrals of first responders at me. Of all those referrals, only about 4 or 5 actually showed up.
Yep.
And we can talk about that difficulty a little later on. But one of the things, as I mentioned it in the intro, you're a dispatcher. And for me, we talked about it right beforehand. You said I forgot my ER nurses when I talked about it.
Yeah.
But for me, dispatch should never be forgotten, because I think that there's so many things that happens in dispatch that people don't know about. And maybe it's time for people to understand how difficult it can be to be a dispatcher. Do you have any stories that do you think it's important? The audience that we have here is therapists, first responders in general, but I like to think that other people listen.
No, and I think that's something good, because us dispatchers are kind of labeled as civilians, which, yes, we are civilians. We're not sworn officers. A lot of the old timers say that they can do our job very easily. I'm going to say it in a nice way. But what a lot of people don't understand is that police officers, fire department, and EMS, they're going one call after one call after one call. They're only handling one at a time. In dispatch, we're not. We might have 3 accidents going on. We might have a medical, a fire, and a dog complaint. We have so much more going on than just what the officers and the firefighters on the field have.
But I think it's also because you're central.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember when I worked at a particular department is when I sat in dispatch, I'm sorry, my ego's way different. I'm like, I couldn't do this. Because one of the things that was very hard for me to understand, and it's this, like, I worked as a ER mental health clinician. One of the hardest parts I was thinking about is, you don't know what the hell happens after that call.
Right.
You know, I can, if you're on YouTube watching this on either Milford TV or on my podcast, there's a Chicago police call from the dispatch perspective that is chilling. And you just YouTube it and you can find it. And obviously, we've known each other, so I've seen it from your perspective. What's the hardest part about being a dispatch and having these calls? And you know, it's not like, oh, you know what? I'm having the best day of my life. I just wanted to let you know, Lisa. Thank you.
Yes, we always hear the negative. We very rarely hear a thank you. We very rarely hear you did a great job. I think the public is so negative towards our field. And I'm saying first responders as a whole.
I think that you're right about people have no idea. So how does it feel for you? And I'm going to give you a very specific example, not about a person, just in general, but it's specific. You have someone says, my child's not breathing. They're not calling a police officer. They're calling you. And you're on the phone until at least fire, EMT, police, whatever comes first, shows up at the house. And with particularly kids, it's even harder.
Yes.
You have kids.
I do.
I have kids. I think that comes from a different perspective sometimes. And I'm not putting people down who don't have kids. It's just a different perspective. That's all I said.
Yep.
But how is it for you to my 2-year-old's not breathing?
It is probably the worst call that we can get. Any call involving children, I will say, I'm going to probably speak for all of us dispatchers, is they're one of the hardest calls, whether you have children or not. You think that that child is just so innocent. That child did really nothing to get into whether it's they're not breathing or whatever situation they're in. But with kids, it's the hardest calls we've ever taken.
So someone calls, you dispatch appropriately. One of the realities you've talked to me about, and I want to put it out there, is that, the officer is at the door, and they drop the phone, and you're left with that.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, the phone's ringing.
Yep. Phone's ringing.
You just had
Somebody's
this call
walked in.
about talking almost through CPR with someone or something like that.
Yep.
I've worked a lot of difficult jobs in my career, and it's not a brag, it's just what it is. I can't imagine being in that position. I need to know the conclusion.
Sometimes, on a rare occasion, we do get a conclusion. Actually, I want to say it was possibly 2012. I had a mother call me and say her daughter wasn't breathing. I believe her daughter was maybe 9 at the time, somewhere around there. And she was so hysterical. I finally, what we call it, I had to do a verbal slap. And it was just like, a very stern, ma'am, do you want to help your child? It straightened her out. She did CPR. Her daughter just graduated high school this year, I'm pretty sure. We're still friends on Facebook. We've gone out to dinner together on a few occasions, but that's one of the situations that we actually got
I was going to say, that's a rare occasion,
very
right?
rare. Trying to think of a recent situation that we've had. We've had maybe a few motor vehicle accidents with pedestrians. We never know. We're the ones getting those phone calls of the people screaming, whether it's I just hit somebody or I just witnessed this. Very, very rarely we have any idea if that person was transported to UMass, transported to Boston, survived, lost a limb, anything like that.
They had a scratch and they went to Milford Hospital. Not putting down Milford, but that's the work they do. You never know any of that.
No.
I really, I caught myself while we were talking about that. I don't want to be one of those public people who go, what's your worst story? I don't want to hear your worst story, I promise. But I do want to know how, you don't process that. It's the officers, they're the same way. But how do you deal with it? Because you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah. I don't really truthfully have an answer for that. I think what I do a lot is I don't bring my work home with me. At least the police department work home with me. And I try to leave that at the door. I think a lot of us first responders have a sixth sense. People think we're kind of a little screwed up. But I think what the world needs to realize is that we see so much bad. We just need to move on with our day.
Right. But I'll challenge you a little bit here. I'm able to leave it at the door, but I can think about 20 stories right off the top of my head of either being in the ER as the clinician or on the streets in Worcester or in the weeds in Framingham, where you kind of take care of the situation. And then, all right, well, now you got to go to this call. And I don't know what the hell happened.
Right.
I can tell you that I try to put that aside, and I do have the good part is in mental health and social work, they kind of teach you how to kind of leave it at the door. They don't teach that to dispatch.
No, they don't.
So do you have any suggestions as to how we could deal with that? In the sense that for me, one of my biggest pet peeves, and not every department's like that, and I'm not putting everyone, it's not an all or nothing thing. But there's so many people that, you're dispatch, you're one of us until you're not. And you're a civilian. And you don't understand. And if I'm talking out of tongue, I don't care. It's just what it is, right? Is there a way for people to understand that the trainings for mental health, the trainings for everything else that goes with that is as important, if not more, for
It is very important. And actually, over the last probably 2 years or so, it could have been more, us dispatchers actually have to do, it's in Massachusetts, it's a mandatory 2-hour behavioral health training for our mental health. And that has just been implemented, again, 2-3 years ago. And I think another good thing is for us as dispatchers is we can talk to our coworkers about it because they understand what's going on. Therapy's huge. Groups, things like that. More and more nowadays. When I started 20 years ago, it wasn't even a thing. Right. But more and more now, there are first responder trained therapists, they're trauma informed, there's groups and things like that.
I still think there's a stigma. that associate with that. And I think that I will even go even further for my dispatch folks that I've worked with before, currently, and in the future. There's a double stigma because you work in the first responder world, so you got to be able to handle it. But you're a civilian, so you definitely can't handle it, and that's why you're in therapy. So to me, there's a double stigma there.
Yes. I think first responder world therapy is stigmatized. I said recently to one of the guys I work with, I said, I'm on antidepressants, I'm on medication, and I see a therapist. They were shocked. I'm like, we all have crap we have to deal with. Like, we have to process it. Like, they were just blown away by that. But I also think it's a lot of knowledge.
Right.
A lot of people don't understand that you can be on antidepressants, you can see a therapist, and you can be completely sane and completely living your life.
Right.
They're all stigmatized as people who are on medication and see therapy are crazy.
Right. And I think that that's the stuff that I feel like dispatchers go through, first responders go through. I do feel there's been a shift in the last maybe 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
I'm not saying a full shift,
No.
but at least a shift. And, part of this stuff is, when we can go into the CISMs of the world, we can go to the, I think it's, what's the other one, CISR, CISR. But I also think that sometimes dispatch doesn't get invited to that party.
Yes. A lot of debriefings were not asked to come. Nowadays, we are. But, I've been through many, many traumatic incidents. Dispatchers were never asked if they wanted to join in on the debriefing. I will say I've noticed that the fire department is more on board
Right.
with the debriefing and the therapy and the counseling and the mental health compared to the police department as of right now. And I'm just saying in a generalized, I'm not just saying, the town I work in, because I've worked for several, but it's definitely generalized that the fire department is more, if they have a debriefing, they ask us if we want to come. They, for the most part, have a debriefing for every major incident they do have.
Do you see I think that the part that I would tell you is that I've had many police officers, many firefighters say exactly the same thing. That it's less stigmatized in the fire departments than it is in the police departments. So you see the difference in culture. What do you think is different from the fire to the police culture that makes it a lot more open to this?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
To me, I'm going to give you my opinion, is that they're used to group therapy. And what I mean by that is this. They sit around the table and chit-chat and shoot the shit. And they're able to do that and be able to be themselves. Where I find that you don't get that as much on the police departments.
I agree with you and when the fire department goes on calls, for the most part, they're kind of a group. Police department, they might be having dinner by themselves. They might be having dinner with their family. But they're in a cruiser, for the most part, by themselves.
Right.
So you are right about that. I agree wholeheartedly.
And I think that that's because the other part, too, that I bring up is that in police, because you're on your own constantly, it becomes also part of the culture that you can handle your shit on your own. You can bleep me all you want on this, but that's the truth.
It is. And we see that being dispatchers, if we have we're the ones taking the call. We have a strange feeling about something. If we're sending 2 people, there's a reason.
Right.
Especially like us experienced dispatchers. We hear the tone of their voice. We hear the background noises. We hear the red flags. If we're sending 2, there's a reason. If we're sending more, there's a really good reason.
And that's good law enforcement instincts.
And a lot of them will back the other one off. And for us experienced dispatchers, we will tell them no. continue, please.
Right. And that's what I mean about such a very unique experience when you're at dispatch. I mean, it does happen, but for the most part, they're civilians. But they have to have almost the instincts of not being on scene. I get that. I don't want to compare that. But the instincts of, this doesn't smell good.
We have to do active listening. There's all kinds of sayings that we learn in our trainings. We have to do active listening. You have to listen to the background noises. You have to listen to how that person is talking to you, whether they're whispering, whether they're trying to say they're hurt or there's a bad situation, but it was just a 911 hang up. Nope, everything's fine. So you have to you got to go with your gut with a lot of them.
And hang-ups, how's that for you?
For the most part, there were hang-ups.
Okay.
But you also have to be careful that you don't get that 300 call syndrome that they call.
Which is?
Which is you get so many 911 hang-ups or so many accidents, so many of the same call that you disregard something big.
Right.
And you don't catch on to that one red flag that was given out.
It's a lot of pressure. I don't like the other part that I would talk about too is not only the hang-ups, which again, not comparing the two, very different, but when I worked on a crisis team for mental health, those hang-ups kind of accumulated. And sometimes we would have the display and sometimes we wouldn't. And then, 508-555-5555 is called 7 times with hang-ups. Is that a red flag? Is it someone who's butt dialing you?
Or is it an elderly person who's blind and deaf and has no idea what he's doing with his phone?
And trying to do 411.
Yep, and we have that. We have it from the senior centers. We have it from, nursing homes. And we have our frequent flyers.
Frequent flyers are very important to note.
Yes.
One of the things that I remember, and I will give credit to my old boss about this, it's easy to get annoyed with frequent flyers. And again, if I'm breaking a wall, I don't care. But my boss years ago, when I first started on the crisis team, says, but remember they're a frequent flyer for a reason. And obviously I work in the mental health field, but I've done substance use all that time. In Massachusetts, you don't need necessarily a different licensure. And that's where I never, like you talked about the 300 call syndrome, I call it they're a frequent flyer for a reason. And that keeps me from being, cynical.
Yeah.
Lisa's calling again.
Yep. And it's hard to not say that.
Right.
It's truly hard not to say that.
We're humans.
Yep, we are. And I think that's something else that I think the public needs to remember too, is we are humans.
Right.
And with the frequent flyers, we have one recently who's lonely and just wants somebody to talk to. And I know it was several years ago, I had a younger dispatcher who was just rude to an elderly female. And afterwards I was like, what happens if that was your grandmother?
Right.
That, you have no idea her situation. You have no idea if she's lonely. You don't know. And you could tell he changed his tune. Sometimes we're the only people they get to talk to.
That's the experience from the crisis team, too. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Because there would be a guy, no longer of this world, unfortunately, he would call 2 to 3 times. I worked the overnight and the night, like second shift, or the equivalent to second shift sometimes, but mostly nights. And he would call, and he would be honest. He'd be, hi, it's John Doe. I'm just lonely. And I would say to John Doe sometimes, John, I'm dealing with 2 other things. I know you're lonely. Can you call me in like 20 minutes?
And he does.
And he does, faithfully.
Yep.
And I talked to him for 5 minutes. He wouldn't call for the rest of the night because I gave him a time of day for 5 minutes. Those are the little things that people don't know about our jobs. And yeah, I give credit where credit is due. When I tell John Doe, call me in 20 minutes, he would call back, and sometimes I'd be, oh, I forgot to say that. And that's like the human side of me. But then you talk to him for 5 minutes, and you just made his day.
Yep.
Those are different types of frequent flyers, but he called because he was truly, I was his only, well, someone from the crisis team was his only contact all day.
Yep.
And I think that that's the other part that people don't understand about, you screen those out so that they don't have to go necessarily for a call.
Yep.
But you do have to deal with that, and that's not like in the logs or anything like that.
So it actually is in the logs.
Oh, it is?
It is, but that helps us to get our call volume, to show our true call volume,
Right.
not just the calls for service that police officers go to. We do have those calls that us in dispatch have to deal with, whether it is somebody picking up their wallet, that was turned in, somebody dropping off a wallet or a phone that was turned in, whether we have those frequent flyers, or whether we have people who are just downright screaming at us for God knows what reason, because we have that a lot. Again, they're frequent flyers. They're just screaming at us because they're mad at life, and we're logging those. So we do log those for the most part.
Okay. Well, the other one that I wanted to mention, as we're already close to time here already.
Wow.
I'd love to talk about, well, I don't know if I want to love to talk about it, but I certainly want to bring up. The other hard ones, I think, is suicide. Having dealt with those on the crisis team. Obviously, different animal than yours. I'm not, again, for anyone who listens to this show knows I never take away what I do and say it's the same as, because it's not. On dispatch, the inconvenient truth from a crisis team's perspective, and this is what I've observed, they call me they're suicidal with a plan on the crisis line. It doesn't seem as intense as when they call you guys.
Most of the time when they call us with a plan, they're doing it. They have the plan to do it. We do get the calls, the cry for help often. But we do get those phone calls where they're done. You know that they're going to attempt to successfully harm
Unalive
themselves.
themselves, yeah.
Yep.
Those are chilling.
Those are difficult. I am thankful, to be honest with you, that I haven't had too many that that have stuck with me, that have really stuck with me. But it's definitely hard when you have the family members who find their loved ones too, because they are either in shock and completely dumbfounded, or just speechless, or you have them hysterically where you can't understand anything.
And that's one of the things that I explain to people is you can see it on scene, and that happens. But dispatch hears these wallows from deep down inside of people's hearts that is so indescribable. And yes, did I have those a few times? Sure. But again, not the same job. And it's hard for me to make people understand that deep fear, that I'm so fearful, I want to end this. I'm done with this. It's hard to really put in words how much emotion that brings.
Yeah. It's, I'm not one to tear up at work. I actually very rarely do. But sometimes you get that one call, and after you hang up, you got to take a breath, or you need to walk away for a minute.
Right.
And just kind of think about what just happened. I mean, you're coming right back to that chair and those phones, but it's okay for us to walk away for a minute.
There's so much more I want to ask you. We didn't even get to substance use.
No, we didn't.
We didn't get to any of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this episode with you, but we're going to talk on the other side if you don't mind.
Sure.
But thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted people to see it from a dispatch perspective.
Thank you.
It's forgotten too often, and you know how loyal I am to you. So love you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll see you on the other side for the next episode.
Thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.